Welcome back. Like I said, I was going to spend a bit of time trying to get the game from just sort of bouncing the ball vertical. I think I came up with a solution. It's probably maybe not the best, but hey, it works. And so what I've done, and I mean, if you want to try to solve it on your own, all the power to you. But my thinking was, okay, what's the situation when the ball's going vertical? Well, that means basically the velocity in the y direction is fine, okay? But there's basically no velocity in the x direction. So what I came up with was created a variable that allowed me to measure the x velocity, which you can do with the rigid body. And then if it was within if it was too low, okay, and that sort of gave me the vertical bounce, then it just certainly added a little bit of force sort of to nudge it in one direction or the other, right? Sort of nudge it towards the left or nudge it towards the right. There was a little bit of trial and error, as there is with anything, but this is what I came up with here. Now, where I put it was on the ball, because that's where we'd want to be forcing the ball. And so up here I created a float, the horizontal velocity, just a place to hold the velocity there. And so what I did originally was, in the fixed update, because we need to be constantly checking this, I set that horizontal velocity to the rigid bodies, right? I can measure the velocity from the rigid body and just the x value. Not interested in the y. And then I printed it out just sort of so I could see. And then I was looking at it and sort of measuring out, okay, what seems to be the problem? At what velocity does it seem to be an issue? And even though these numbers are a little high here, I was just making sure it was working, making my playtesting a bit easier. I found about 5, okay? And so I had to split it up into the negative and the positive, because obviously as the ball is moving towards the right, from left to right, it's got a positive velocity, and then if it's moving to the left, from right to left, so moving in the left direction, it's got a negative velocity. So what I did was created, if it's somewhere between -5 and 0, okay, so it's 0 and -5, what's it going to do? Well, it's going to add some force, okay, to the object, and just in the x direction. I don't have to worry about this here. And I probably didn't have to put in a random range there, but I thought just to make it less obvious that I've put in sort of a range there, and it didn't seem to force it too much. So you could put larger numbers and you would get more of a force. But what I found was that as it was below, it just gradually pushed it faster and faster until at least it got up to 5. Okay, and again, your mileage might vary, right? You might have to change that up. And same thing if it was going the opposite direction. And it seems to solve that problem. Okay, good. So that's one solution, and that's, as you always build a basic game, and then you have to look at, well, how can I improve it, or what are the issues, and then problem solve it, because in the end, really game design is all about problem solving. You've got the idea, and then you've got to make sure that it works, and even if you thought your idea was reasonable, you often find out that you've got to improve it. So, this came up as an issue, and I sort of had to deal with it there to make sure the game worked. But I don't want you always listening to me, right? I mean, just following the instructions, that's sort of reading the recipe. We want to come up with a bit of our own stuff. And so, I've given you a great start, okay? You've got most of it here. Few things that you could add. First off, you could find the original Pong sounds and create put the sounds in. So, when it bounces, when it hits the wall, when it, when the player wins or whatever, like when it hits the boundary, then you can make sounds, okay? And you can find Pong sounds, the original sounds, basically, or replicas of them, somewhere on the web, okay? Another thing is, at the moment, it's just a one-player game versus AI. Could you make it a two-player game? Okay, so you could do that. Another thing, I don't like the way I have to click even if the enemy wins. Okay, so at the moment, if I hit play here, okay, now it always defaults to me starting, so that could be something too. You could randomize that. I have to click, and then, okay, see, now you can sort of see how that, my script sort of helped there, started moving it that way. Now, okay, I guess the enemy has to win here for this to work. So, but regardless, what happens is if I do eventually win, then the enemy, you can see this work a little bit here, so it's getting this greater as you watch this. The enemy will, trying to play and talk at the same time. The enemy, I have to click it to get for it to release the enemy. So you might want to have it so that it automatically does when you're playing AI. Okay, you might also want to have it so it's, like I think I mentioned, a 2-player game. Okay, you could, if you want, create a menu system. So you have a choice, 1-player or 2-player. Okay, so having a menu system, so before you start the game, then it launches either the first version or the second version. Minimally, it'd be nice to have a title screen, just so that you can know what you're playing. Okay, third thing, or I don't know which number I'm on here, but another thing which would work was having a maximum score. Okay, so at the moment it goes up infinitely, okay, but obviously once maybe you reach 15 or whatever, excuse me, the ball is no longer instantiated. So there could be a check if enemy score is greater than or equal to 15, end the game somehow. All right, so there's all those things, plus a myriad of other things you could do. Okay, you could have, sorry, just thinking again here, the ball could speed up gradually. So there might be a hit counter. So after it bounces 10 times off the paddle, the X direction is increased, just like we sort of did here. And then gradually the ball gets faster and faster. One other thing is we don't have any English on the paddles. So the paddles are just flat and the ball basically just bounces off of it. You could think of either a programmatic way or just a physical object way of getting the paddle so that, if it hits near the side, it bounces more obliquely, right? It bounces off more to the side, whereas if it hits the center, it's more dead on. Okay, so you can always think about how that might work. Like I said, you could do it either physically, and I'm sort of kind of drawing a little bit there to give you a hint, or you could do it programmatically as well, whichever way you'd like to do it. But basically, make this Pong game better. Okay, I've given you the foundation, and I'd like you to take that and sort of go beyond what I've given you here. Okay, so we'll leave this video here. You're well on your way to personalizing your Pong game and making Atari proud. All right, we will see you later.